Madam Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. Give us your sense of the agenda, and I dare say, I bet the pandemic response is going to be on that agenda.
Oh, definitely, David. That's what everyone is dealing with in Europe as well as the United States. And NATO came up with a plan that the defense ministers in June actually put in place so that we would have help for allies if there was a second wave. Unfortunately, we are seeing the second wave right now. And so we are beginning to disperse to some of these countries that have an uptick, and that is most of the countries in Europe. And just for instance, David, the U.S. put 200 ventilators into our stockpile that was part of our NATO plan, and those ventilators are now being distributed right now to Albania, Montenegro, and North Macedonia. We have a trust fund that is coming forward as well to help where countries don't have some of the supplies they need, and we have transportation capabilities that are coordinated through NATO. So we are working together as allies in this COVID-19, just as we do in our security umbrella in times of stress and need.
At this point, Madam Ambassador, is it affecting NATO readiness at all?
It is not, because we have put readiness and security right at the top of our priority list. And we have said we don't want a health crisis to turn into a security crisis. Our adversaries are not letting down, and neither are we. So we are keeping our forces ready. We're keeping them rotating in Europe, just as they have been. And we are training. We're doing our missions in Afghanistan and Iraq. And we're not letting up one bit.
I'm glad you raised that, Madam Ambassador, because some of us lose track of it, believe it or not. What is the NATO role in Afghanistan and in Iraq right now?
Well, let me say in Afghanistan that this is in response to our 9/11 attack. And NATO, for the first and only time, has invoked Article 5, which says if one of us is attacked, we're all attacked. So our NATO allies are with us in Afghanistan to keep terrorism from building up and being exported to our countries ever again. And because we are there, we are supporting the Afghan people who are now meeting with the Taliban to try to come to terms for a peace agreement that would make a stable government in Afghanistan that would be supported by the people, that would protect the human rights and the rights of women, that would be able to settle Afghanistan and assure that terrorist groups cannot build again. And that is the NATO mission, along with the United States, right now in Afghanistan. And we are supporting the Afghan peace process in the hopes that at some point we will be able to leave Afghanistan and they will be able to fully function on their own.
Madam Ambassador, as you talk about the response to the pandemic, operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, all of this costs money. Tell us about the budget for NATO, and particularly the contributions from the various parties. That has been a hot issue, as you know, with the United States and members of NATO for a while now.
Yes, all of us are trying to hold up the commitment that we have made to spend 2% of our gross domestic product on defense. And 10 of our countries have stepped up and are meeting the 2% goal. And we are going in the right direction to increase that as we move forward. Because we cannot be a legitimate deterrent alliance for any adversary that might think that they can attack or take over sovereign territory for any of our allies. And we are standing up for security, not to let down on defense spending, because we don't want to let our adversaries think that we are lessening our resolve on the defense and security side. So our our defense budgets are continuing to increase because, and let me make a second point about that. Of course, we're holding our defenses for deterrent capabilities. But the other thing that we're doing in defense spending, it has been so helpful in this COVID crisis. It is the military management that has come to the fore to help in this domestic crisis. So the military training, setting up hospitals, delivering goods, setting up capabilities for help for the medical community that is fighting so hard to beat this virus and all the people who are affected. So our military spending has been an asset for our domestic needs. So we are continuing to push our allies to increase the spending on defense, and that is also being used for our joint efforts to help our allies that are suffering from a second wave of COVID.
Madam Ambassador, as the NATO defense ministers meet, there is a hot spot over there, not in NATO, but adjoining it. And I wonder how that's going to be addressed by this meeting. You have the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia that Turkey, a member of NATO, has become involved in, allegedly, and even some conflicts within NATO between France and Turkey, reportedly. As I understand it, the president of Armenia is asked even to address the NATO defense ministers. How are you going to address that very sensitive issue?
It is sensitive, David, just as you said. Having allies get involved in other conflicts or draw tension with other allies, it has certainly become something that we have tried to avoid. I will say in the situation with Nagorno-Karabakh between Armenia and Azerbaijan, it's been very difficult because they're both partners of NATO. As you know, we have 30 allies, but we have 40 partners that speak with one voice with us for security measures. Both Armenia and Azerbaijan are partners with NATO, so we don't want to take sides, but we are urging both sides to have a ceasefire and to go to the Minsk group to settle the underlying issues here. The reason that the fight is happening is because of a 30-year dispute about the borders of Azerbaijan, within which is a very large Armenian population. And that happened after the Cold War and the breakup of the Soviet Union, and the lines were drawn, and it has been a simmering conflict for a long time. If we can settle the issues of the sovereign rights and the dealing with this very large Armenian population within Azerbaijan's territory, that is what will settle these tensions. And what we're trying to do at NATO is say this conflict cannot be settled with conflict of like war, or arms or killing people. It's going to have to be settled with the Minsk group. Now, the Minsk group is co-chaired by U.S., Russia, and France. And we're calling on both Armenia and Azerbaijan to come to the table and talk with these three co-chairs or add new co-chairs if they want to. But anything they can agree on that they would then accept an arbitration with is what we are asking them to do.